Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People's Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My Karen daughter is having another baby that she can't afford. After that, brother ruined my wedding by proposing, so I ruined his proposal. And after that, am I the jerk for telling a teacher she's being unreasonable? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to have a baby. Oh come on Reddit boy, you know our baby would be cute. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My Karen daughter is having another baby that she can't afford. My daughter and her husband have recently announced their fourth baby in a small little family gathering I hosted. I know I should be excited and congratulatory, but I'm really not. I just felt exhausted the moment that she announced this. Context. My daughter and her husband aren't really well off financially, so they regularly drop off the kids with me since they can't afford daycare. Of course, I don't mind watching them, but the problem is that they'll pick them up quite late, later than the agreed time. So like I say 9, but then they come at 1. Sometimes it feels like my grandkids spend more time with me than with them. They also rely on me for money as well, but I'm not sure if the money I send them is even being used on my grandkids, as I've seen them buy new stuff for themselves after I give them money for something related to the kids. There's a lot more that I can rant about, but it just feels like it's just gonna be another kid for me to take care of, and I just can't force myself to be excited anymore. I honestly think that they should have stopped at 1. Well, my daughter noticed my lack of a noticeable reaction and asked me if I'm happy to be a grandma again. And I honestly blurted out, "Again? Really?" I didn't mean to, but she didn't take that well and said that I was a horrible person for not being excited for her and for getting a new grandchild, and the whole room just became tense after that. Me and my daughter haven't talked much since, but she still drops off the grandkids. Apparently, she's waiting for an apology from me. And while I'm hesitant, I don't want to split apart the family. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. She won't speak to you, but still uses you for childcare? Nope. You need to set some boundaries and fast. She doesn't pick the kids up on time. She finds a different babysitter next time she needs one. Yes, you're so horrible that I won't speak to you, but you're good enough to watch my kids. It sounds as though OP needs firmer boundaries, which include eliminating or at least drastically reducing the free childcare. Not the jerk. Quit babysitting and pull all financial support. If she will not speak to you, she doesn't get to use you as free childcare. Not the jerk, but it's time to play hardball. No offense, OP, but why wouldn't they use you when you offer free childcare and apparently give them an allowance? You need to teach them personal responsibility. Lack of funds? Then they need to get better jobs or take a second one. You are not their ATM. They want to offload the kids, then they need to pay for a babysitter or find a childcare facility. It's time to practice tough love, or your daughter is never going to learn. You're the jerk. You have no right to decide whether or not she should be having any more kids. If you want to be some sort of monster and not help your own daughter with her finances and childcare, that's on you. But as a grandmother, your only role is to support her in any way you can and not be judging her on how many kids she has. Ever since I had my first baby, I've been judged non-stop by people I thought cared about me. As a result, I've gone no contact with most of them. I have 7 kids now, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. I love being a mom, and your opinion of me could not possibly mean less to me. If I could find a man who was worth a darn, then I'd probably settle down and let him play the father figure to my kids. But until I find one who's not a complete loser, I'm fine on my own. Fortunately, I qualify for plenty of benefits as a single mother, so I don't have to work anymore. I hope your daughter finds out what benefits she's entitled to, so that she won't have to ask you for help in the future since you're such a judgmental jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter? Please let us know. I think that last commenter's the biggest jerk of them all. How did people get so messed up? Brother ruined my wedding by proposing, so I ruined his proposal. I, 35 male, have a young brother, Todd, 29 male, who had a complicated birth and had to stay a month in the ICU. And because of that, my parents have always doted on him and almost denied him nothing, even if it was to the detriment of my sister, Abby, 32 female, and I. My brother drinks in on the attention and has on more than one occasion made himself the center of attention at either my or my sister's or a cousin's special event. Because of this, Abby and I have a strained relationship with Todd and our parents. Unfortunately, Todd met and fell in love with Lucy, who's 24, who announced her own pregnancy at the baby shower my mom held for Abby. When I proposed to my wife, Michelle, 30 female, I just wanted to elope, but she really wanted her family to be there, so I invited my family out of obligation. While out, my best man Jim, 35 male, noticed a receipt from a jewelry store slipped out of Todd's pocket. Jim confronted Todd about this, which led to an argument. Jim told me everything, and I told Todd that he was no longer going to be a groomsman because I knew he was going to propose at my wedding. Todd cried to our parents, and which led to a blowout. In my parents' eyes, since Todd never admitted that he was going to propose to Lucy at my wedding, I was unfairly judging him. I refused and brought up Todd's past behavior. My parents couldn't refute this and got Todd to agree to not try anything at my wedding. This wasn't enough to convince me to let him be a groomsman, but I warned him that if, as a guest, he'd try anything, I would make him regret it. Fast forward to the wedding, and surprise, surprise, Todd walked over to Lucy and proposed to her during Michelle's father-daughter dance and did it in a way so that everyone would notice. Cue my revenge. Jim and I had hired a woman to pretend to be Todd's side piece who cornered Todd and Lucy and claimed that she was pregnant with his baby. Todd denied this, but when she called his phone, I gave her his number and messed with Todd's phone to incriminate him. It didn't look good. Lucy threw the ring back at Todd and left in tears. When Todd saw the smile on my face, he knew that it was me, and I didn't respond to a single call or text from him or my parents until after the honeymoon. Lucy has thrown Todd's stuff out and has been denying access to their kid. Todd is furious and demanding that I clear his name. I sent him a text saying that I had no idea what he was talking about, as well as a screenshot of a bill for the wedding, and gave a vague message demanding reimbursement for half of the wedding costs. Michelle knew the whole time what I was planning and gave me the green light after Todd ruined her moment with her dad. So I felt pretty good, but now even Abby thinks that I went too far. Well, what do you think? Did OP go too far with his revenge or not? Please let us know.
Sounds like Todd messed around and found out.
Am I the jerk for telling a teacher she's being unreasonable? My son, Ollie, is a senior and on ASB. They had organized a homecoming pep rally scheduled for this Friday. They've been prepping for a long time. There's a dance routine and a teacher versus student basketball game. Last week, Ollie tripped over a chair during the night and tore a ligament in his ankle. Obviously, he can't participate in the rally. They can't really continue with the program as planned with my son out. They really tried. The teacher in charge asked other seniors if they wanted to take my son's spot, but they declined because they didn't want to look stupid doing a dance routine with 4 days prepped. That's when my 11-year-old son, Brian, said he wished he could take his brother's place. I thought about that and realized it was actually a good idea. He does a lot of gymnastics and picks up on choreography quickly. I had a talk with Ollie, who wasn't sure. I spoke to the teacher, who asked my son to do some of the choreography, and he impressed her. She then said that she would talk to the other students about Brian taking the spot of Ollie. The students thought the idea would be funny, and everyone agreed to it. My son would actually be paired with Ollie's girlfriend. The teacher told me that the rally is scheduled towards the end of the day on Friday, so Brian would have to miss 3 classes, 2 for prep, 1 for the rally. I spoke to 2, and they were fine with it. Whatever work they do on Friday can be made up on the Monday. The third teacher, language arts, said she wasn't okay with his skipping class to go to a rally at the high school. That's not a valid excuse to miss class, so she won't let him make up a test that she was going to schedule. He would have to get a 0. I told her that it's not like he's skipping school to go to the park. If 2 teachers in the high school is okay, then why can't she be? She said she doesn't play favorites. I told her it's not playing favorites, it's being reasonable. Would she just have me lie? She said of course not, but that's her rules. I said we'll leave it at that. I decided it wasn't worth this much drama, and my son getting a 0 on a test in the 6th grade wasn't going to ruin his life. I could be a jerk dad and go over her head, but I won't. She did email me today and asked if I decided if my son was going to skip class to go to the high school rally. I replied, he's skipping class because he has a doctor's appointment, so he'll make the test up per her rules. What's she going to do? Leave class to see if he's dancing in the rally? Can we please get a few things straight? I'm speaking as a recently retired teacher. 1. The school administrators, not teachers, determine what's an excused absence and what isn't. Schools have policies in place. 2. When the administration decides, per school policies, that an absence is excused, teachers must allow students to make up work. 3. It's rare to have every student in class show up on a test day. There's almost always at least one kid out due to illness or a school choir concert or something. Teachers routinely create alternate tests when they create the original test. 4. Yes, the teacher has to proctor the kids who missed the test. I spent many lunchtimes and after school hours doing this. It's part of the job. It's also why it ticks me off when people say teachers have short hours. I was there 10 hours a day, not counting the many evenings at home grading and calling parents. 5. I always hated it when parents pulled their kids from classes for extraneous reasons, but it was not my call to make. It isn't Brian's teacher's call either. OP, you should have gone to the principal first, not the teachers. I'm just about positive the principal would have given it a green light. Not the jerk, except for the lying part. I'm so confused at the "you're the jerk" comments. My mother was the kind of parent who would make me go to school no matter what, and more than 10 years later, I still get annoyed thinking about it. One test in 6th grade is really not a big deal. Makes me wonder how old these commenters are. You're the jerk. The teacher had a test assigned for that day, hence why the other 2 teachers are allowing it has no bearing on whether the 3rd teacher was unreasonable. Making up classwork and homework is nowhere near as intensive as trying to schedule a makeup test day and time. All you did was teach your kid that it's okay to lie to get what you want and make other people's lives more difficult for the sake of your own personal gain. You're the jerk. His language arts teacher said that it's not a valid excuse to miss class and she won't let him make up the test. She's right. You had a talk with Ollie who wasn't sure, but you decided to push it anyway and you're now lying so Brian can skip class. I'm getting a sense of favoritism here. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the teacher? Please let us know. U.S. Air Force supply problems. I need an antenna to fix a jet. They made me order the whole tail. In the early 80s, I was in the U.S. Air Force. My job title was Avionics Comm Nav Specialist. Translation, I fixed radios and navigation equipment on A-7D and later on A-10A aircraft. One of the A-7D aircraft that I was called on to fix had been struck by lightning on the tail. The upper 12 inches of the tail is the UHF radio antenna. It was totally destroyed by the lightning strike. My unit at the time was on temporary duty, TDY, at Barbers Point Naval Air Station in Hawaii for a 30-day exercise. I was just a young pup at the time, 19 or 20 years old I think, but I was the only comm nav guy that was on the TDY. So I need a new antenna to fix the jet and order one from our supply guy. They tell me that no antennas are available anywhere in the U.S. Air Force. Okay, so what do? I ask. They tell me to order the next higher assembly, basically the tail of the aircraft. I argue for a while, trying to explain how stupid that is, but I get nowhere. They actually get kind of nasty with me. At that time, the Cold War was going strong. Any aircraft that was not mission capable was a very bad thing. A grounded U.S. Air Force jet on a TDY at a naval airbase was even worse. It had to be fixed yesterday. I called my boss back at our main base in Louisiana and explained the situation. He tells me to go ahead and follow the supply guy's recommendation, which I do. It couldn't have been more than 3 hours before I'm told to report to my maintenance officer, the officer in charge of aircraft maintenance, wanting to know if I had ordered an A-7D tail assembly. I have to say, as a young airman first class, talking to a major, I was kind of scared. I explained the whole chain of events, omitting who I specifically spoke with at our home base. The major looked like he was going to explode in anger. I'm thinking, I'm done for. Instead, he burst out laughing. I mean, like laughing to the point he couldn't talk. Laughing so hard that it looked like he was in pain, tears in his eyes, etc. After what seemed like forever, at least it seemed that way, he was able to actually speak again. The major told me that the way the supply group worked has always been a problem. What I did just brought it all out into the open with all the attention it got. He actually thanked me. I got my antenna 2 days later. Trespasser demands I replace his car. Okay, so I'm going to preface this post by saying that the entrance to my property is a standard driveway through roughly 20 meters of wooded area before the driveway opens up to about the same size as a standard American 2-lane roadway. My home sits about 500 meters back off of the road, and I've sculpted my driveway, as well as a pass in front of my home and a lot of my backyard into a drift track. We have two giant no trespassing signs at the road facing side of the woods, as well as a speed limit 15 sign 10 meters beyond the woods, mainly to remind my friends to not be jerks on their way in when the track isn't hot. Everything is above board with the county, my homeowner's insurance, and local PD. Now with that out of the way, I went to the port today to pick up a much-awaited 1997 Nissan we're building for my mate. As the mate and I are pulling down the drive in the truck, pulling the trailer with the car on it, my mate yells, "What the heck is that?" and points off to the corner of the paved part of the property where I have a medium-sized shed which I keep landscaping things, like a tractor, golf cart, etc. I look over to see the nose of a 2016-2017 Mustang stick out of a now-collapsed shed and a guy laying on the pavement next to it. We immediately drove straight over with haste. As we pull up, our entitled person sits up from his prone position and starts yelling about suing me, calling me a jerk and a bunch of other names. I yell as loud as I could, "Hey!" Then I said, "Who are you and what are you doing on my property? Why is your car in my shed?" To which entitled person responds, "I'm going to sue you as your racetrack isn't safe and you owe me a new car." By this point, my mate is already on the phone with 911 and has hopped back into the truck. I explained to entitled person that he's trespassing and in fact, he owes me a shed and probably a few other things including a tractor. Entitled person starts to limp towards me, screaming that he's going to own my property and I won't have anything when he's done with me. I decide to just get back into the truck and wait on the police. Roughly 15 minutes later, two police cars come screaming down my driveway with their lights and sirens on and see entitled person beating on the window of my truck with his hands. The police immediately handcuff him and then my mate and I step out of the truck. Entitled person told the police that he's been driving past my property all summer and hearing engines and tires squelching from the roadway and finally decided that he was going to run a few laps today. That he saw the no trespassing signs but didn't think they were there for him. Who else would they be there for? Entitled person was arrested on malicious destruction of property. A tow company in town came and impounded his vehicle, and I was finally able to see that the entire shed and everything in it is a total loss. Entitled person did leave in an ambulance, though he should be fine. Insurance is going to have a field day with this one. I'd just like to add that the particular shed sits 25 feet off of the paved surface. I really hope next year doesn't have as many stressful events as this one. I'm starting by adding a gate with a code to enter the property this week. Am I the jerk for asking for part of my sister's house in our inheritance? So I have an issue with my sister, 35 female, and I, 42 female, settling my mother's current estate, and a friend of mine allowed me to post my issue here. A little background. My sister ran into financial issues about 6 years ago. She lost her job and her boyfriend was transferred out of state. So they moved into a house together, but my sister couldn't be added to the mortgage because of her awful credit score. Her boyfriend passed away suddenly and had no will. His family then took the house and gave back some money my sister put into the house, but they told her to be grateful for getting that much. My mother had just come into some money, so she got a house for my sister and her 2 kids. For the first year, my mom covered everything for the house. About 2 years ago, I took my mom into my home because of health issues and took over pretty much everything for her. I realized that my mom was still paying all the taxes on the home when my sister started complaining that she was getting all these scam calls and letters about unpaid taxes. I looked at a few and talked with her, realizing she had no idea what property taxes were. I went over my mom's accounts and found that she was paying property taxes since my sister moved in, and even some renovations to the house. My mother decided to continue to pay for the back taxes, but I got my sister to begin paying them herself. Our mom passed a few months ago, and I'm still trying to sort through her affairs. Her will states everything is going to be split 50-50 between the two of us. While working, I found out my mom put both her and my sister's name on the deed to the house. After talking with my lawyer, I found out that the house was technically owned 50-50 with my sister and my mother, meaning I could claim 25% of the house or value of the house in the estate. I was going through some things with my sister last Sunday, and I asked her if she wanted me to take half of the renovation costs that Mom paid towards her house out of her inheritance. I explained that I did not feel it was fair that she was being enriched by the renovations and getting the house for free as well. She got upset saying that Mom's will states that everything need to be split 50-50 and that's how it should be. I brought up that I wasn't even asking for the taxes, which would add on at least an extra $50,000. She remained firm, and I struggled, saying, "Well then, I guess I will just settle for 25% of your house." She demanded to know why, and I explained that Mom owed 50% of the house, so half of that is 25%. She got mad and is now blasting me to the family, and some understand my point, but others told me that I'm being greedy. But I don't feel like handing over $150,000 to my sister for nothing, but I was willing to settle for half the renovation costs of $50,000. So, am I the jerk for asking for part of my sister's house? Robber mistakes me, the cashier, as a customer, offers to cut me in on robbery. I'm a convenience store cashier, and besides the occasional robbery, nothing really happens here. We've had a handful of super dramatic, get-on-the-ground robberies, but most are just regular shoplifters. Because nothing really happens here, I like to make small talk with the people in the store to pass the time. Sometimes people have great stories. Sometimes we end up knowing someone in common. Sometimes it's just nice to make a person smile. The other day, I was out from behind the register stocking shelves. I was the only person in the store because weekday afternoons are usually slow and because basically everyone's quit. It's getting cold here and the building still hasn't turned the heat on, so I had a hoodie over my uniform, short sleeve shirt and name tag. So I guess I just looked like a guy browsing the aisles. But it wasn't a problem because when a customer came in, I'd say, "Let me know if you need anything," and that cleared it up. Maybe two came in the entire start of my shift. Just as things were wrapping up, and I've had a long dead streak, a guy about my age came in and seemed in a great mood. He also had a big hoodie, but it's cold out, so I didn't think anything of it at all. I said, "Let me know if you need anything," from down where I was with the shelves, and he came and stood by me, kind of giggling. Weird, but I've seen weirder. Whatever. Finally, I said, "Can I help you?" And he just goes, "Hey." So I'm like, "Hi," and he starts talking to me about the logo on my hoodie, local sports team. And we go back and forth a bit. My side of the conversation was normal. His side was really overstated. In hindsight, it's because he was nervous, but I was kind of checked out and didn't really care at the time. Like, I'd say, "He's got a good arm, but his head just isn't in it this season." And the guy would reply, "Oh my god, the best arm, once-in-a-lifetime talent, but he's not there at all. Gone, trash, garbage, they should just cut him." I keep stocking the shelves, not thinking at all about the odd nature of what he's saying, and instead thinking in the back of my mind, is he gonna buy something or what? From there, we actually got to talking about how we got into the game and had a really heartfelt conversation about going with our fathers and sitting in the cheap seats, and did actually sort of bond a little. Finally, we run out of sports commentary to make at one another though, so there was a wave of a silence for a few minutes. Then he gets uncomfortably close to me and whispers, "I like you a lot. You know that?" So my first thought was that this guy was hitting on me. No problem at all if that's what you're into. It's not my scene though, so I took a healthy step back and told him thanks, but no thanks. He laughed kind of maniacally and explained to me, no, he meant he liked me, so he'd be willing to cut me in on what he was currently doing. I ask what that is. He explains, "Ain't nobody in here. I've got my truck outside. I'm gonna load it up with beer and crap. You seem like a good dude, so I'm tipping you off in case you want anything. Ain't no one here. It's easy money, bro." I couldn't believe it. He was trying to rob the store, and he was telling me about it. I quickly realized his overly excited, socially inappropriate behavior must have been something he was on. Rather than confront someone that's on something, in my experience, their moods can change from perky to violent really quickly. I just went with my gut and decided to play along. I knew I needed an excuse to get back behind the register, so I said, "Good crap. Forget the beer though, man. I'm going for the real easy money." And I hopped over behind the counter, where I promptly, but discreetly, pressed the button that locks the doors from the inside, followed shortly by our brand new panic button. First time I'd ever used it. Hoping there wouldn't be a time, but at least I wasn't genuinely panicking yet. At this point, he's loaded both shoulders up with six-packs and headed for the door to make the first of what I'm sure he anticipated would be several trips. He pushed against the door with his hip, and of course, it didn't budge. And he pushed pretty hard, anticipating it would swing easily, so I kind of felt bad seeing him wince. He nearly dropped the beer. He turned to me, more frustrated than scared at this point, and went, "Bruh, the door is jammed. Can you give it a try?" I was nervous to step out from behind the register in case this guy had a weapon, so tried to deflect and was just like, "Maybe you've got to pull it." He started freaking out and was running around the store. He was trying the back door, but it locked as well. He was trying to climb up and reach the one tiny window we've got, but not only was it too high, it doesn't really fit a person. I kept playing dumb. Eventually the cops came. Took a while, and the guy had resorted to hiding in the stockroom by the time they made it over. Not before first wrecking a couple aisles in his frenzy, but at least I was able to lock him in the stockroom once he went inside. They came in to arrest the guy, and he starts trying to blame the whole thing on me, saying I set him up, saying I made him do it. It genuinely confused the police for a bit. So, I don't work here as a robber. I do work at the gas station, though how much longer will depend on how many robberies I live down. Fill out a health and wellness survey of every shift after losing most of our benefits? Sure, boss. After reading a story about the boss that calls the worker off the clock to berate them made me think of my petty little story with my company. Like many other companies, our leadership recently released news of upcoming changes that even though profits for our company are up, they are eliminating most of the remaining perks that are still standing. Company-supplied phones for anyone except the tops of the departments, gone. Reimbursements for things like safety shoes, eyeglasses for those of us in the metals and fabrication area, gone. All 401k matches, merit increases, and/or bonuses frozen until figures reflect pre-lockdown levels, i.e., much larger profit margins even though workload has increased. Our direct area has had a few manpower losses due to a few folks deciding to retire and a few that decided to pursue work-from-home opportunities, hiring freeze to replace anyone. All of this while the majority of the higher-ups and anyone who works with a computer and argued they can work from home are, working from home, which in our eyes is essentially a substantial raise or savings for those lucky individuals that can work from home, fuel, daycare, etc. With the cases on the rise again, they decided to implement a health and wellness screening that must be completed every shift within 24 hours to the start of that shift and presented at the security checkpoint. There's even a nice link to where you can complete it on your own phone via an app for our convenience. Already annoyed at the above-mentioned cuts, and now they're wanting me to use my personal phone and data to complete a survey before working hours. I read the requirements again. It just has to be within 24 hours to the start of the shift and presented at the security checkpoint. We were working on average between 12 and 14-hour days, so I was easily able to complete and print a physical copy of the survey at the end of the day for the following day's requirement. The next day I showed up to security and gave them the paper. She just kind of looked at it and asked what it was. Told her it was the wellness screening so I can enter the building for my shift. She replied, "Oh, well, it has to be done before your shift. This has yesterday's date on it." I pointed at the disclaimer that said it just had to be within 24 hours to the start of the shift, which it was. Which, to her defense, is kind of silly because a lot can happen between your day prior and the start of the new shift. Looking slightly annoyed, she said, "Oh, okay. You can just use your phone going forward so you don't have to print it out." Thanked her and said it was actually easier for me to just do it at the end of my shift so I didn't have to think about it in the morning, especially since I didn't have access to Wi-Fi until I was already past the security checkpoint. Third morning, I did the same thing. She rolled her eyes and put the paper to the side. Didn't realize it at the time, but I was informed afterwards if we didn't use the app version, it didn't have a digital record, so they had to save all physical papers in a folder and retain them in their office. The fourth morning, the head of security was at the door, and as soon as I showed the paper, he asked why I was choosing to do the physical paper instead of the app. Didn't want to get too in-depth, but told him it was easier for me to print it out at the end of the prior workday, and these guys do not pay my phone bill, so I was not going to use my personal phone and data to do a redundant survey off the clock every morning. He tried to argue the paper option was really only for the plants and not for the offices, and I was the only person printing them out in lieu of using the app. Told him I did not see where it said plant use only on the form, and if that was the case, HR would need to update the verbiage. Couple of coworkers in the area caught part of the interaction and how the guy was complaining to my boss as soon as he hit the door about 10 minutes later. I filled them in on what I was doing and they decided to follow suit. All 15 of us completed the survey at the end of the day to bring in the following morning. Friday morning arrives. I'm sitting in my car watching as a line forms and everyone has a paper in their hand. Can make out security guard's face. She looks ticked off. Finally get out and go to walk in. Big grin on my face and say good morning. She doesn't say a word, just does the temperature check and snatches the paper out of my hand. Around first break, I see our HR rep walk into the shop and talk to my boss. He looks over at me and points in my direction. Oh boy. And she walks over and introduces herself. We'll call her HRQB because she looks like she can play for a minor league. HR. Good morning. I'm HRQB with Human Resources. We received a call from the head of security and they're saying that you're giving them printouts of the new health surveys. Do you need help with setting up the app? Petty me. Oh no, that's not necessary. I actually already told him it's easier for me to do it at the end of my shift the day prior instead of doing it on my personal phone in the morning. I don't get very good reception here until I'm on the Wi-Fi, and that's past security. HR. Well, you don't need to be on the Wi-Fi here to complete the survey on the app. You can even do it at home before leaving for work and take a screenshot of the confirmation. That way, you won't have to waste paper and the security team member at the door won't have to keep it in a folder and drop it off at the office every day. It will save a lot of time and energy. Petty me. Well, unfortunately, the company has taken away all of the company-issued phones except for select individuals, and I'm not going to do the survey on my personal phone or during non-work hours. I agree, doing this survey every single day is a bit redundant and wasteful, but it isn't my paper, and proof is required for me to enter the building. While it is tedious, I'm pretty sure that security is on their phone for 7 out of 8 hours that they are stationed at the door. Think they can take 2 minutes to walk down the hall to drop off the papers at the office. Pretty sure I could have poked the vein on the side of her head and caused a stroke. I thanked her for her time, and my team lead came to pull me to help him with a job/save me. The first few days of the following week, most of my coworkers kept printing out the physical copies, which I thought was hilarious, but it was pretty short-lived. HR must have worked harder than she had ever worked in her life, because wouldn't you know it, come that following week, an email came out with a link to a new survey that only had to be completed one time online. And if after that at any point you had flu-like symptoms or were around anyone that was sick, they held you to the honor system to report it to supervision/HR.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.